Now, joining us is Advocate Mark Oppenheimer, advocate and member of the Johannesburg Bar. Mark, thank you so much for your time. You had previously said that South Africa taking Israel to the ICJ is the worst decision. Following this afternoon's outcomes coming from The Hague, do you stand by that stance?
Yes, well, I suppose the first thing to be noted is that the primary relief sought by South Africa, which was to order Israel to stop its military engagement in Gaza, that relief was not granted. I think because the court recognizes implicitly that Israel has a right to defend itself and defend its citizens from Hamas. Furthermore, you'll note that the court's judgment started off by acknowledging the horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th and talks about the abduction of the hundreds of hostages and the killing of innocent civilians. And of course concludes by saying that Hamas has an obligation to release all of those hostages without any conditions. So there is a sense in which some of Israel's claims have been vindicated through this litigation.
When you're taking a look at some of the quotes that were coming out of the court this afternoon by on both ends, what did you make of that as well, to say that, some of the ministers, the Prime Minister's remarks as well, some of the President's remarks as well, and of course the Minister of Defense in Israel? What did you make of those quotes that were being used?
Yes, it's worth looking at the difference between the quote by Gallant, the Minister of Defense, that was read out by the court and the one that was produced by South Africa. The court correctly points out that Hamas is sought to be eradicated. This was a line that was left out by South Africa. It's quite clear from the statements of Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel's goal is to eradicate Hamas, the terror group, that Palestine should be free from Hamas, and that all civilian life is sacred. If we look at the actual relief that's granted by the court, really it's a reminder to Israel to abide by the obligations in terms of the Genocide Convention, in terms of how it conducts its continuing battles against Hamas.
What does that look like? What do we see? Because this is not a complete and categoric ceasefire. This is to prevent acts of genocide. Israel has maintained that they don't believe that these are acts of genocide. So then how does that become implemented? Yes.
So, first of all, there is no mention of a ceasefire at all. So that is relief that the court refused to entertain. It's implicit that Israel will continue its military engagements in Gaza, and really this is to regulate its conduct. One of the methods to ensure that it does abide by its treaty obligations is to produce that report within a month. Now, it's worth bearing in mind, of course, that South Africa brought this litigation in a strategic manner, which was it ambushed Israel by bringing its application on the 29th of December, when most reasonable people are on the beach, and asked for a hearing within the first week of January. So Israel's ability to defend itself in court obviously was hindered by this. And so this report opportunity would give Israel an opportunity to explain all the measures that it takes to prevent the loss of civilian lives, for example, creating humanitarian corridors, warning civilians before it bombs buildings, ensuring that aid trucks are able to enter. So I imagine that we'll see much of that in that report that comes.
All right, thank you so much for your time. That's Advocate Mark Oppenheimer, advocate for the member of the Johannesburg Bar. We're going to take you live now to remarks by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, before we go back there, I still have Ziyanda Ngobo in studio. Let's unpack some of this reaction that we've been hearing. We just heard Advocate Mark Oppenheimer.